Good morning. During the mid-20th century, the New York fashion industry was segregated, not by law, but because discrimination was an accepted practice. Many Black designers faced barriers in acquiring training, securing bank loans, and even buying fabric. In 1949, educator and civil rights leader Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune and Jeanette Walsh Brown founded NAFAD, the National Association of Fashion and Accessories Designers, with the goal of educating Black designers and raising their profile. Then, throughout the 1950s, Black designers began breaking into the industry, working under 7th Avenue manufacturers. In order to illustrate the advancements of Black designers, from entry-level workers to creative directors of international luxury brands, this paper will trace the careers of 5 of these designers. Arthur McGee is remembered as a trailblazer on 7th Avenue and was nicknamed the Dean of African American Designers for his role in mentoring those entering the industry, such as Scott Barry and Willie Smith. Actress Cicely Tyson described him as one of the greatest fashion designers in the world, a man we don't know enough about, end quote. While studying at MFIT, he apprenticed under Charles James in his studio at the Chelsea Hotel. He quit school after 6 months in 1957 and went on to work for the 7th Avenue firm Bobby Brooks, where he became the first African American to run a design room in New York. However, he was not immune to the discrimination that occurred in the garment district. For example, his status as a designer was questioned by the proprietors of fabric stores. In the early 1960s, he launched his own brand, creating designs that fused the intricate geometric pattern making that he learned from Charles James with ease of movement. He was also known for transforming African mudcloth and batik fabrics into classic sportswear styles, carried by Bloomingdale's, Henry Bendel, and Bergdorf Goodman. In 1969, McGee, along with John Weston, John Haggins, and a young Stephen Burrows, was honored at Bergdorf Goodman's benefit, Basic Black at Bergdorf's. Although they were celebrated, the event focused, rather awkwardly, more on the race than it did their designs. During an interview in 1992, McGee expressed his reservations about being labeled. "We are not Black designers, we are an American designer, the same way that Bill Blass is an American designer. As soon as you categorize us, you can erase us," end quote. In 2009, the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art honored McGee with a Lifetime Achievement Award, as did FIT the following year. While McGee has played a significant role in the industry, written documentation on his career is sparse, and he has been largely omitted from fashion history. Wesley Tan was a contemporary of Arthur McGee. Tan was raised in Washington, D.C. by family friend and civil rights activist Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Dr. Mary Bethune was a frequent visitor to the home and possibly influenced Tan's decision to study fashion. In 1953, after attending the Hartford Art School of Fashion, he moved to New York, where he apprenticed under Pauline Trogère and Oscar de la Renta. In 1960, he established a firm a block away from FIT on 27th Street and 6th Avenue. His voluminous designs were noted for their bold sense of color and beautiful construction. Women's Wear Daily said, "His clothes look as well turned inside out as they do the other way around," end quote. A superb example of this is a black evening wool coat with a silk gold paisley lining that you can see across the street in the exhibition. In 1962, he established Off 7th, a mixed group of 13 designers, all of whom were starting their own brands. The New York Times featured an article about the group's decision to break away from the mass market. They did not have the capital to purchase large quantities of fabric, but promoted their limited output by pointing out that they were producing unique designs in small runs. Tan explained, "We had to use odd pieces, but that's what made us different. We couldn't do one dress over and over again," end quote. Tan's designs caught the attention of Henry Bendel and New York Society women such as Jackie Kennedy, who commissioned several maternity dresses. Similar to Arthur McGee, Wesley Tan mentored students interested in pursuing a career in fashion. As an advisory board member for the High School of Fashion Industries, he constantly lobbied for resources. In a Women's Wear Daily article, he insisted that 7th Avenue take a more active role and invest in its future designers, saying, "A lot of those kids feel that if I made it, they can make it too," end quote. Tan also volunteered at the Harlem Institute of Fashion, teaching courses on dressmaking and construction. Lois Alexander founded this institution in 1966 and the Black Fashion Museum in 1979 to bridge the gap in fashion education. Other fashion professionals, such as milliner Sally Victor and publicist Eleanor Lambert, were avid supporters and frequently lectured at the institution. After working in the fashion industry for more than 2 decades, Tan closed his business in the early 1970s because of the difficulties of dealing with the racism of some of the local suppliers, he explained. During the 1970s, Scott Berry became a master of sensuous, body-conscious jersey dresses alongside designers Stephen Burrows and Halston. Bernadine Morris of the New York Times said, "Scott rarely plays it safe. His clothes are not for shrieking violets," end quote. Models Billy Blair, Pat Cleveland, Norma Jean, and Naomi Sims were especially fond of Berry's crisscross designs, and they were seen wearing them in numerous press photos throughout the disco era. Berry grew up in Philadelphia and learned to sew by watching his godmother and grandmother design dresses for the jazz singers, which some of them were previously mentioned, such as Della Reese, Sarah Vaughan, and Dinah Washington. Berry notes, "That's more or less how I was indoctrinated into the business of clothes," end quote. He studied art and fashion at the Philadelphia Museum College of Art and later attended the Mayer School of Fashion in New York, where he apprenticed under Arthur McGee. He received a start by working odd jobs on 7th Avenue and began experimenting with matte jersey in 1966, citing his admiration for Madame Gray's jersey masterpieces. On the heels of the civil rights movement, Black models and designers, including Berry, were celebrated in the fashion press. He noted the achievements but added, "We're in now. The only thing we have to do is to stay there. The gap between Black designers and white designers is beginning to close," end quote. In 1982, he closed his New York business and moved to Milan, where he designed for Crisia and Milan Dior before launching Scott Berry Italy in 1989. His Italian-influenced sportswear line focused on daywear in linen, wool crepe, silk, with a few matte jersey dresses. The initial collection was launched in Japan and later in New York. Sadly, in 1993, he died at 52 from brain cancer. Berry had began making inroads designing internationally, but there was still a long ways to go before a Black designer became recognized on a global scale. In collaboration with FIT and 7th Avenue, Harveys Bristol Cream sponsored an annual gala and fashion show honoring the achievements of Black designers from 1978 to 1984. And as you might be able to see, it actually took place on this very stage. The proceeds from the event went to fund scholarships for students at FIT and the Harlem Institute of Fashion. Throughout the years, several designers, including many featured in the exhibition across the street, were honored with a Harvey plaque, featuring an illustration by Antonio Lopez of Billy Blair and Pat Cleveland. At the 1984 gala, Naomi Sims boldly stated, "We're going to have to fight harder for recognition in the next 10 years than we ever had to in the 1970s. There's still no great fashion house run by a Black designer," end quote. At the ceremony, Arthur McGee won his first Lifetime Achievement Award and encouraged designers to think internationally. Another mentee of McGee, Willie Smith, was already in the process of building an international sportswear empire. His brightly printed cotton designs for Willie wear were known for being youthful and affordable. At its height, the brand boasted sales of $27 million and was sold in 600 stores internationally, including his flagships in New York, London, and Paris. Unfortunately, Smith fell victim to AIDS at age 39. His career has been well documented in the fashion press, and his legacy celebrated through Willie Smith Day, along with a bronze plaque along the 7th Avenue Walk of Fame. Patrick Robinson is recognized for reinventing several international fashion brands. His career was sparked by a Willie wear garment he discovered while working at Nordstrom's. "It just clicked. I was meant to be a designer," Robinson said. His decision to pursue fashion was confirmed after watching a film featuring designers Jeffrey Banks and Calvin Klein. He enrolled at Parsons and transferred to their Paris campus after the first year, where he became the first assistant to Patrick Kelly. After graduation, he designed under the women's sportswear brand Hermann Geist, where he finally met his idol, Jeffrey Banks. Banks saw potential in Robinson and recommended him to Armani, who was looking for a head designer to revamp his bridge brand, Le Collezione. Armani offered him a position on the condition that he moved to Milan the next day. Robinson finished his first line for the company within 10 days in order to meet the production deadline. Over the next 5 years, he learned the art of fine fabrics and craftsmanship, along with the business of transforming a line into a commercial success. Robin Gavin of the Washington Post praised his work, reporting, "In the 1990s, Robinson was responsible for many of Giorgio Armani's power suits that female big shots have relied upon when deal-making and strong-arming," end quote. His success at Armani caught the attention of executives at Klein, and in 1994, they recruited the 28-year-old designer to create a luxury line that would invigorate the whole brand. His first collection consisted of garments that struck a balance between fit and fluidity. In one notable example, seen in Vogue, the drape of the diamond-shaped panels on the pink evening dress create a luxurious effect as they catch the wind. While working at Klein, Robinson met his future wife, Virginia Smith, who is now the fashion market and accessories director at Vogue. However, after Robinson presented his third collection, the company's Japanese owners decided that the line was too expensive to maintain and discontinued it. While working for other designers for nearly a decade, Robinson opened his own sportswear brand, which had a successful 6-year run, but encountered financial difficulties toward the end and closed in 2003. Robinson promised he would never design again, but the Ellis company offered him a job and drew him back into fashion. He was assured complete creative freedom, which he took as an opportunity to bring back the glory of the classic 7th Avenue sportswear brand. Robinson said, "What I figured out is I like big companies and I like to fix things," end quote. In spring 2004, his collection was described as eclectic randomness, which combined disparate printed textiles and frilly skirts and tailored jackets, and was also hailed as the most exciting launch since Marc by Marc Jacobs. Although his spring 2005 runway show received great reviews, the executives at Ellis refused to produce the collection, and Robinson abruptly resigned. A New York Times article titled "Divorce 7th Avenue Style" attributed the failed relationship to a disconnect between art and commerce. As Sally Singer, the fashion features director at Vogue, observed, "There's nothing about the industry that encourages people to think in the long term, to foster talent for more than a season or two," end quote. In 2005, Robinson returned to Paris, this time to reawaken the house of Paco Rabanne. With a new creative director on board, the executives had plans to open 9 stores in China. For his second collection, Robinson purchased 500 vintage silk kimonos from an antique dealer and reconstructed them into sporty razorback tank dresses. He highlighted Rabanne's technique of piecing together dresses by replacing the metal rings with tack stitches to connect the slits of fabric. Despite strong sales, the executives dropped the apparel section of the brand after 3 collections. Throughout Robinson's career, his innovative design ideas have been constantly challenged by the monumental task of reinvigorating the reputation of deteriorating fashion brands. He is currently designing a sportswear line of his own from reclaimed fabric. The online magazine, The Business of Fashion, has credited Olivier Rousteing with instigating a digital revolution using the power of Instagram to reinvent the historic house of Balmain. Roosting was raised in Bordeaux, France, by his adopted parents, and from a young age, loved to sketch. He briefly attended ESMODE, the prestigious fashion school in Paris, before leaving to intern at Roberto Cavalli in Florence. Soon after, he began working alongside chief designer Peter Dundas, where he learned about luxury fabrics and construction. While he valued his 5 years at Cavalli, he was drawn to Christophe de Carnan's glamorous rock and roll styles at Balmain. Roosting sent de Carnan a handwritten letter along with his CV and was immediately hired. Over the next 2 years, he worked his way up and was appointed creative director in 2011 when de Carnan stepped down. At 25, he became the youngest designer since Yves Saint Laurent at Dior to hold such a position. Roosting said, "The thing that was most shocking for a lot of people was not my age, but my color, and that really surprised me. Suddenly, there were all these stories about me being the first Black designer in a luxury heritage fashion house," end quote. Roosting was far from the first, as we have just seen, but this does suggest something about the lack of knowledge and recognition of Black designers. For Roosting's first collection, he maintained the glamorous, sexy aesthetic de Carnan had established, but later moved away from the streetwear influence to focus on more sophisticated couture. Roosting returned to the heavy embroidery couture craftsmanship associated with Pierre Balmain's designs, but introduced a shorter, military-like structured silhouette to modernize the house. When designing his spring 2013 collection, he looked to Cuba for inspiration. To recreate the intricate woven patterns seen in traditional wicker chairs, artisans at Balmain embroidered each design by hand and embellished them with thousands of crystals. And this is a superb example that you can see also in the exhibition. The high-quality workmanship is reflected in the price tag of a ready-to-wear dress, which can easily reach $17,000. Roosting says, "The women I dress are powerful. They are strong. They are women who are going to change the world," end quote. In his world, diversity is an important element that he infuses into the brand. He promotes models of various backgrounds and places them in his fashion shows and ad campaigns. Roosting is also leading the way in marketing, using Instagram to promote the brand. Balmain became the first French house to reach over 1 million followers on Instagram and currently has over 6.1 million. Roosting has become a celebrity himself and is often featured in Balmain ad campaigns alongside his brand ambassadors, aptly named the Balmain Army, which includes models, actors, musicians, and pop culture icons. He has catapulted the once exclusive brand into the mainstream consciousness of the masses, blurring the lines between luxury and pop culture. While many may dismiss his influence as a millennial trend, sales have increased 20% since his appointment. With flagship stores recently opened in London, New York, Hong Kong, and Dubai, the brand continues to expand globally. While Roosting has risen to the top and has millions of followers worldwide, Black designers still represent only 1% of all fashion designers covered by VogueRunway.com. As John Calapinto of The New Yorker noted, as one of the very few Black creative directors of the luxury label, he sees it as his mission to provide minorities with greater visibility in fashion, end quote. It has been 33 years since Naomi Sims commented about having a Black designer at the helm of a major fashion brand. And the struggle upward continues, as Roosting is an exception rather than the standard. Thank you. And I'll take any questions if anybody has any. Are you able to speak into the microphone just because we're live streaming?
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to say thank you. You did an incredible job, an in-depth presentation of the first order. And I want to just extend my thanks and praise to you.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
That's a good question. Thank you again for the presentation. Why is it, do you think, that only 1% of black designers are covered by Vogue.com?
It's really difficult to say the exact reason. I think that if you look at it, Elizabeth and I had curated another exhibition on global fashion capitals, and what we found quite interesting is that they were just starting to cover a lot of the emerging fashion capitals. So I think as they start to expand, maybe highlighting more of them, but it's difficult to say. But if you look at even the discrimination that still occurs within the fashion industry, whether if you're looking at fashion models or fashion designers, you could still see it covered with Vogue Runway and many of the other fashion press.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I would just like to also thank FIT and you guys for everything that you've done. The research and everything is really incredible. So I commend you for that. Also, the speakers, I had some questions, but I wasn't going to climb over everybody to get to the mic. So I'm so glad that they passed it here. I have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, I'd like to say something about Patrick Kelly.
Yes.
And I'm very proudly wearing the Pickaninny chic, Afrocentric look today. I think that what he did was made it okay for us to wear our hair wrapped and be very proud of it. I mean, as a black person, we've evolved and we've gone through a lot. We've had to deal with a lot of adversity, and this is not only for them, but this is for those of us not only in the fashion industry, but everywhere. So yeah, just like it became okay to wear an afro. I remember when braids first came out. If you worked in a bank, you could not wear braids in your hair. Yeah. So yeah, I think he was one of the first designers that made it okay. But I must ask you, I'm a graduate of FIT in the fashion design department. I've worked here as a professor in the fashion design department, the art area. And I have to ask, I mean, I'm sure you can't cover everybody.
Yes.
But how could you go through that whole list of designers and not mention Stephen Burrows?
So,
how could you not mention Eric Gaskins,
yes.
Constance Saunders? There's so many people that haven't been mentioned, and I know you can't mention them. Maybe you can't mention them all.
Yes.
But for me, let me just finish that.
Of course.
I love the fact that you guys are doing this. I think it's long overdue for FIT to make such an extensive representation of the history of black fashion, and even the jazz part of it. I loved, that was fantastic. I mean, it's all been great. But I would like to say that I think that this is a great beginning. I think this is a great part one. I think there needs to be a part two. And then finally, because I'm not going to ask for the mic again, this event has been sold out for over a month. If in fact, you know, I encourage my friends, will come because there might be some seats available. I'm just wondering why this wasn't offered. When you knew that it was sold out over a month ago, could it have not been moved to the larger auditorium? Because most of my friends who wanted to come, who would have been here, if it had not been sold out, they would have been here. So that's it.
I'm the organizer, so I think
Okay,
I'm better
thank you.
suited to answer that question. There was a conflicting event that started in the afternoon in the other venue, so it was too complicated to have a morning session here and an afternoon session there. So even though we had a huge success, we weren't able to secure the other venue because it was already taken. So that's why we did the live streaming, so anybody can, and there are people watching us right now. Okay.
And then to answer your question, of course, we would have loved to include all of the designers. In the exhibition, we have a number of pieces by Stephen Burrows and a beautiful piece by Eric Gaskins. For this paper, I really wanted to focus on, because many people have spoken about Patrick Kelly and Stephen Burrows, and I really wanted to share with the public some of the names of people who they are not familiar with to really expand that research. So I tried to pick 5 fashion designers that really span from the beginning of 7th Avenue and working there to then reaching that global market. So I had picked only 5 because that was the confines within that 20 minutes. Great.
Thank you. What, if anything, is FIT doing or can do to change that 1% number?
Well, I think if you look at the exhibition itself, that was something that we really wanted to highlight, that there's so many wonderful Black fashion designers that have really largely gone unrecognized. There was the wonderful exhibition at Pratt, which had 3 different scrolls of so many Black fashion designers, many of them that have gone unrecognized. So I think that's one way. Another way is we had produced 2 videos on diversity in fashion, one with a group of models and one with a group of designers, really to kind of expand the conversation, what's currently going on in regards to diversity for both of these different groups of designers and models. So I think trying to expand that, open up the conversation, and for a lot of people visiting the exhibition, they'll see, wow, look at all these amazing designers, and they look at more of their fashion design as opposed to just the fashion designer and them being more of an American designer or a Parisian designer than just a Black designer. Great. So I think that wraps that up for right now. Thank you. And Liz is going to introduce the next speaker.